Thick black smoke poured from the twisted wreckage, flames crawling hungrily across the metal frame. Parker Grant didn't think twice. He sprinted toward the inferno, yanking open the crushed door to pull the unconscious woman free. Blood streaked her face, but her chest still rose and fell. As he unbuckled her seatbelt, something caught his eye, a delicate silver bracelet dangling from her wrist, engraved with words that stopped his heart cold, "For the dreamer who never gave up." The exact inscription he'd written 7 years ago for the woman who vanished without a trace. Taking half his heart with her. What would you do if the stranger you just saved from death turned out to be the one person who shattered your world? Could you forgive the past, or would old wounds run too deep? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you. Make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The early morning light filtered through the thin blinds of Parker Grant's modest 2-bedroom house in Brookhaven. At 37, his face showed the wear of a man who'd learned to carry weight that wasn't his alone. He stretched his sore shoulders, another night sleeping on the lumpy couch. The single bedroom upstairs belonged to his 7-year-old daughter, Faith, and that was non-negotiable. "Dad?" A soft voice floated down the stairs. Faith appeared in her oversized pajamas, her auburn hair a tangled mess, clutching the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was a toddler. "Is it pancake day?" Parker's tired expression melted into warmth. "Every Saturday is pancake day, sweetheart. You know that." This was their rhythm. Parker waking at dawn, preparing breakfast, getting Faith ready for whatever the day held. During the week, he worked at his small automotive repair shop on Maple Street, a business he'd built from nothing after leaving his brief stint in the service years ago. The shop barely kept them afloat, but it was honest work, and it let him be there when Faith needed him. As he flipped pancakes on the worn griddle, Parker watched Faith coloring at the kitchen table. She was drawing again, the same picture she always drew, 3 figures holding hands under a bright sun. A family, their family. Except the third figure, the one with long flowing hair, existed only in Faith's imagination and his memories. "Do you think she had brown eyes like me?" Faith asked suddenly, not looking up from her crayons. Parker's hand paused mid-flip. "Maybe," he said carefully. "You were so little when she left. Barely 6 months old." The truth was a jagged stone he'd swallowed 7 years ago and never quite digested. Sophia, his wife, had vanished one autumn morning without explanation. No note, no phone call, no trace. Just gone, as if she'd been erased from existence. The only thing she'd left behind was a silver bracelet he'd given her for their first anniversary, sitting on the bathroom counter like an accusation. He'd had it engraved, "For the dreamer who never gave up." The irony burned even now. "Will I ever meet her?" Faith asked, her voice small. "I don't know, baby," Parker answered honestly, sliding pancakes onto her plate. "But we're doing all right, just the 2 of us, aren't we?" Faith nodded, but Parker saw the emptiness in her eyes. It showed up in quiet moments, in the questions she asked before bed, in every drawing of that phantom third person. She felt the absence like a missing tooth, her tongue constantly searching for what should be there. Life wasn't just emotionally exhausting. It was financially crushing. Faith had been born with a respiratory condition that required regular specialist visits and medication. The medical bills stacked up faster than Parker could pay them down. Some nights, after Faith was asleep, he'd sit at the kitchen table with a calculator and a pile of overdue notices, trying to make numbers bend in ways they simply wouldn't. His second job, working security at the Brookhaven Event Center 3 nights a week, helped. But it meant less time with Faith, more exhaustion, more of his life spent just treading water. After breakfast, they drove to Faith's Saturday art class at the community center. Parker used the 2 hours to run errands, pick up parts for the shop, grab groceries with whatever money remained after bills. It was a carefully choreographed dance of survival, one he'd perfected over 7 years of solo parenting. On the drive back to pick up Faith, Parker's mind wandered, as it often did, to those early days after Sophia disappeared. He'd filed missing person reports, hired a private investigator he couldn't afford, called every hospital within 200 miles. Nothing. The police had theories. Maybe she'd left voluntarily. Maybe she'd met with foul play. Maybe she'd had a breakdown. Maybe. No answers, just an endless ocean of maybes that he'd drowned in for months, until he realized he had to choose between finding her ghost or raising their daughter. He'd chosen Faith. He'd always choose Faith, but that didn't mean he'd stopped wondering. Late at night, when insomnia clawed at him, he'd replay their last morning together. Had there been signs? Had she seemed distant, scared? He'd kissed her goodbye before heading to work, and she'd smiled at him, told him she loved him, said she'd see him that evening. By the time he came home, she was gone, and baby Faith was crying in her crib. Hungry and alone, the bracelet sat in a locked box in his closet, along with wedding photos he couldn't bear to display, but couldn't bring himself to destroy. Sometimes Faith would ask to see pictures of her mother, and Parker would pull them out, pointing to the smiling woman with dark hair and bright eyes, a stranger he'd once known better than himself. "That's your mom," he'd say. "She loved you very much." It was the kindest lie he could tell. The truth was, he had no idea if Sophia had loved their daughter. How could someone who loved their baby just walk away? The question haunted him. As Parker pulled into the community center parking lot, his phone buzzed with a reminder about Faith's upcoming doctor appointment. Another specialist visit, another copay he'd have to figure out how to cover. He took a deep breath, pushed the worry down where Faith couldn't see it, and headed inside to collect his daughter. She ran to him with a painting she'd made, 3 figures holding hands under a rainbow. "It's us," she announced proudly, "and the angel watching over us." Parker hugged her tight, blinking back the sting in his eyes. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. We'll hang it on the fridge when we get home." As they walked to the car, Faith's small hand in his, Parker made the same silent promise he made every day. Whatever it took, however hard it got, he would give his daughter the stable, loving life she deserved. Even if he had to sacrifice everything else to do it, he had no way of knowing that in less than 24 hours, the life he'd carefully constructed would shatter and rebuild itself in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. That the woman he'd mourned for 7 years was closer than he'd ever dreamed. That fate was about to collide with chance on a rain-slicked highway, and nothing would ever be the same again. Sunday morning arrived with the promise of rare free time. No work at the shop, no security shift, just a whole day with Faith. Parker had promised her a trip to Brookhaven Park, maybe ice cream if the budget allowed. Small pleasures were the ones they could actually afford. But first, he needed to drop off an urgent repair estimate to a client across town. Mrs. Chun, from the bakery on 5th Street, had a delivery van that was making alarming noises, and she needed to know whether to fix it or replace it. Parker had promised her the estimate by noon. "Can I come with you?" Faith asked, already putting on her sneakers. "Always," Parker said. Grabbing his keys, the drive across Brookhaven took them past the old downtown, past the library where he'd met Sophia during a summer reading program 10 years ago, past the courthouse where they'd gotten married in a simple ceremony with 2 witnesses. This town was full of ghosts for Parker, memories painted on every corner. Faith chattered in the backseat about her upcoming school project, something about family trees that made Parker's chest tighten. How did you explain to a 2nd grader that half her tree was missing? That her mother was a question mark, a blank space where roots should be? "I was thinking," Faith said carefully, "maybe I could do my family tree about just us. You and me. And I could add Grammy and Pop Pop from the pictures." Parker's parents had passed away years ago, before Faith was born. More ghosts, more absences. That sounds perfect, honey, Parker said, his throat tight. Family is who shows up for you. Who loves you. That's what matters. He believed it when he said it. Most days anyway. After dropping off the estimate, they were heading back through the warehouse district when Parker saw it. Smoke rising in thick black columns from somewhere ahead. His military training, dormant for years, kicked in immediately. His eyes scanned for the source. Dad, what's that? Faith asked, fear creeping into her voice. Stay calm, baby. Probably just someone burning trash. But as they rounded the curve, Parker saw it wasn't trash. A sleek black sedan had crashed through the guardrail and flipped onto its side. Flames were beginning to spread from the engine compartment, and Parker could see someone trapped inside. He pulled over immediately, his heart hammering. Faith, stay in the car. Lock the doors. Do not get out no matter what. Understand? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Dad, no. Faith's voice was panicked. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. I'll be right back. I promise. Lock the doors now. Parker didn't wait to see if she obeyed. He was already running toward the burning wreck, his phone out, dialing 911 as he moved. The heat hit him in waves as he got closer. Through the shattered windshield, he could see a woman slumped in the driver's seat, unconscious, blood running down her face. The operator answered. 911, what's your emergency? Single vehicle accident, warehouse district near Porter Avenue. Car on fire, driver trapped inside. Send ambulance and fire department. Immediately. He rattled off the information. While assessing the scene with the tactical efficiency he'd learned years ago and never quite lost, the driver's side door was crushed against the ground. The passenger side was accessible, but already hot to the touch. Smoke was filling the interior. Parker didn't have much time. He grabbed the door handle, burning his hand, and yanked. Locked. He looked around frantically, spotted a piece of metal debris from the crash, and used it to smash through the remaining window glass. Smoke poured out, making his eyes water. Ma'am, can you hear me? No response. Parker reached in, feeling for a pulse. There, weak but steady. He had to get her out before the flames reached the fuel tank. With one arm, he reached across her body to unbuckle the seatbelt. That's when he saw it. On her wrist, partially hidden by blood and debris, was a silver bracelet. Even through the smoke and chaos, even after 7 years, he recognized it instantly. His hands started shaking as he looked closer at the engraving. For the dreamer who never gave up. The bracelet he'd had custom made. The bracelet he'd given to his wife on their first anniversary. The bracelet he'd found abandoned on their bathroom counter the day Sophia vanished. Time seemed to stop and accelerate simultaneously. The roaring flames, Faith's muffled cries from the car behind him, the distant sound of approaching sirens, all of it faded into white noise as Parker stared at that bracelet. It couldn't be. It was impossible. Sophia was gone. This was just some woman who happened to have a similar bracelet with similar words. Coincidence. Had to be coincidence. But his hands were already moving with renewed urgency. Unbuckling her seatbelt, carefully supporting her head and neck as he pulled her through the passenger window. She was unconscious, bleeding from a gash on her forehead, but breathing. He dragged her away from the vehicle just as the flames began spreading more aggressively. Parker laid her carefully on the ground, far enough from the wreck to be safe. He checked her pulse again, tilted her head to keep her airway clear, and for the first time, really looked at her face. His heart stopped. Short dark hair instead of the long waves he remembered. Thinner face, sharper cheekbones. Different clothes, expensive-looking business attire. But the features underneath, the shape of her eyes, the curve of her mouth, Even with blood and smoke damage, it was impossible to deny. This was Sophia. His wife, Faith's mother. The woman who'd vanished 7 years ago. But it couldn't be Sophia. Sophia wouldn't be here, driving an expensive car, dressed like a corporate executive, not recognizing him or their daughter. Sophia wouldn't have stayed gone for 7 years without a word, unless something had happened. Unless she hadn't left willingly. Unless Dad. Faith's scream cut through his spiraling thoughts. She'd gotten out of the car despite his orders, was running toward him. "Dad, are you okay?" "Faith, stop. Stay back." Parker moved to intercept her, catching her before she could see the woman's face too clearly. "I'm fine, baby. I'm fine." Fire trucks and an ambulance screamed onto the scene. Paramedics rushed past them. Parker found himself giving a statement to a police officer while trying to keep Faith calm and trying not to look at the woman being loaded onto a stretcher. The bracelet glinted in the harsh morning sunlight as they lifted her into the ambulance. "Sir, did you know the victim?" the officer asked. Parker's mouth opened, closed. How did you answer that question? Did he know her? He'd been married to someone who looked exactly like her, wore her jewelry, but that was 7 years and a lifetime ago. "No," he finally said. "I've never seen her before." The lie tasted like ash in his mouth. The rest of Sunday passed in a haze. Parker took Faith home, made her lunch, put on a movie she'd seen a dozen times. But his mind was miles away, trapped in the moment he'd seen that bracelet, that face. After Faith went to bed that night, Parker retrieved the locked box from his closet. His hands shook as he opened it. Wedding photos spilled out. Sophia in a simple white dress, radiant with joy. Sophia laughing at their tiny reception. Sophia cradling newborn Faith in the hospital, tears streaming down her face. And there, in a velvet pouch, was the matching bracelet. He'd bought them as a pair, a his and hers set. His had been lost or thrown away years ago. But hers, he'd found left behind like an accusation the day she disappeared. He held it up to the light, reading the inscription he'd memorized. For the dreamer who never gave up. Parker remembered the day he'd given it to her. They'd been broke, living in a cramped apartment, Sophia pregnant and struggling with morning sickness. She'd been talking about giving up on her design dreams, getting a regular job with benefits. He'd saved for months to buy these bracelets, had them engraved as a reminder that they'd always support each other's dreams. "We're a team," he'd told her. "We never give up on each other." She'd cried when she opened it. Happy tears, he'd thought at the time. Now he wondered if they'd been something else. A preview of Goodbye. The day Sophia disappeared replayed in Parker's mind for the 1,000th time. It had been a Tuesday in October, unseasonably warm. He'd left for work at 7 in the morning. Sophia had been in her bathrobe, feeding 6-month-old Faith a bottle. They'd talked about maybe going to the park that afternoon if the weather held. "I love you," she'd said as he kissed her goodbye. "Love you too. See you tonight." When he came home at 6, the apartment was dark. Faith was in her crib, screaming with hunger, her diaper full. Sophia's car was gone. Her purse was gone. But her phone was on the kitchen counter. Her wallet was in the drawer. The bracelet was on the bathroom sink. Parker had called everyone, Sophia's few friends, her distant family members who she barely spoke to, hospitals, police, nothing. No one had seen her. No credit card activity. No phone records. She'd simply evaporated. The police had investigated, of course. They'd looked at Parker first, as they always do. Interviewed him for hours, searched the apartment, checked his alibi. He'd been at work all day, dozens of witnesses. They'd found nothing suspicious. No signs of struggle. No evidence of foul play. Sometimes people just leave, the detective had finally told him, not unkindly. Especially new mothers. Postpartum depression, feeling trapped. It happens more than you'd think. Parker had refused to believe it. Sophia had loved Faith. She'd wanted to be a mother. But as days turned to weeks, weeks to months, and she never surfaced, never called, never came back, he'd been forced to accept a version of that truth. She'd chosen to leave. Chosen to abandon their daughter. Chosen to erase them from her life. That knowledge had nearly destroyed him. For months, he'd barely functioned. He'd fed Faith, changed her, kept her alive, but emotionally he'd been hollowed out. His parents' life insurance money had kept them afloat until he could pull himself together enough to open the garage, to build something resembling a life. The anger had come later. The righteous fury at a woman who could walk away from her own baby. He'd packed away her pictures, her clothes, anything that reminded him of her. He'd built walls around his heart and focused everything on Faith, but he'd never stopped loving her. That was the cruelest joke of all. Even after 7 years, even after all the anger and abandonment, some part of him still loved the woman she'd been. Still wondered what had happened. Still hoped there was an explanation that would make it all make sense. And now, impossibly, he'd seen her. Or someone who looked exactly like her. Wearing her bracelet. Unconscious in a burning car just miles from where they used to live, Parker's phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Chun thanking him for the estimate. Normal life continuing on. He needed to open the garage tomorrow. Faith had school. Bills needed paying. The world kept turning regardless of his personal crisis, but he couldn't stop thinking about that woman. Was it really Sophia? If so, where had she been for 7 years? Why had she never come back? And most terrifying of all, what was he going to do if it was her? He looked at the photo of Sophia holding newborn Faith. The joy in her eyes looked so real. Had it been fake? Had she been planning to leave even then? Or had something happened, something he didn't know about, something that had made her disappear? Parker thought about Faith's questions, her drawings, her desperate need for a mother. If that woman was Sophia, did she have any right to come back into their lives now? After 7 years of absence, could she just waltz back in and claim motherhood? The anger rose hot in his chest. Faith had cried herself to sleep more nights than Parker could count, asking why her mommy didn't want her. He'd held his daughter through nightmares and questions and grief over someone she didn't even remember. What right did Sophia have to that girl's heart after abandoning it so completely? But underneath the anger was something more dangerous, hope. The treacherous, stupid hope that maybe there was an explanation. That maybe Sophia hadn't chosen to leave. That maybe somehow they could be a real family. Parker shoved the photos back in the box, locked it, and put it away. Tomorrow he'd call the hospital, find out the woman's name. Confirm whether he was losing his mind or if the impossible had actually happened. Tonight. He just needed to survive the weight of possibility crushing his chest. He checked on Faith one last time before trying to sleep. She was curled around her stuffed rabbit, peaceful in dreams. Whatever happened next, he'd protect her. That was his job. His only job. Even if it meant protecting her from her own mother. Parker lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, waiting for dawn. Across town, in a glass-walled penthouse office overlooking downtown Brookhaven, Emily Johnson sat reviewing architectural plans for her latest project. At 35, she was the CEO of Meridian Design Group, one of the most respected interior architecture firms in the region. Her sleek bob haircut and tailored charcoal suit projected the image of someone who had it all together. Someone who knew exactly who she was and where she belonged. The truth was far more complicated. Emily touched the silver bracelet on her wrist. A nervous habit she'd developed over the years. The engraved words had become a sort of mantra for the dreamer who never gave up. She had no idea who'd given it to her or what dreams it referred to. It was the only connection she had to a past she couldn't remember. 7 years ago, Emily had woken up in Brookhaven General Hospital with no memory of who she was or how she'd gotten there. The doctor said she'd been found unconscious near a hiking trail, suffering from severe head trauma. When she'd regained consciousness 3 weeks later, her past was simply gone. Erased like words from a chalkboard. She'd had no identification, no phone. Nothing but the clothes she'd been wearing and the bracelet on her wrist. The police had run her fingerprints, checked missing persons databases, published her photo in local news outlets. Nothing. No one came forward to claim her. No family searching for a lost daughter. No friends wondering where she'd gone. No employer reporting her missing. It was as if she'd never existed before that day in the hospital. The Johnsons, an elderly couple who'd been volunteering at the hospital, had taken an interest in her case. Richard and Margaret Johnson had lost their own daughter years before, and saw something in this lost young woman that called to them. They'd helped her through physical therapy, supported her as she struggled to build an identity from nothing. When it became clear no one was coming for her, they'd offered her a choice: keep searching for a past that might not want to be found, or start fresh. Build a new life. Become someone new. She'd chosen Emily, a name that felt right somehow, though she couldn't say why. The Johnsons had legally adopted her, given her their surname, and helped her discover a natural talent for design and spatial reasoning. Richard, who'd built his own successful architecture firm, had mentored her, eventually making her his successor when he retired. On paper, Emily's life looked perfect. She ran a thriving company, lived in a beautiful home, had adoptive parents who loved her deeply. But there was always a hole at the center of her existence. A fundamental wrongness she couldn't shake. Sometimes she'd catch a scent, hear a song, or see a random object that would trigger something. A flash of feeling she couldn't place. Déjà vu moments that left her unsettled for hours. She'd started keeping a journal of these moments, hoping they might eventually form a pattern that would unlock her past. So far, nothing had clicked into place. The doctor said her memories might never return. The trauma had been too severe, the damage too extensive. They suggested she make peace with her new identity, stop dwelling on what she'd lost. But how could you make peace with not knowing who you were? Every time Emily looked in the mirror, she wondered if the woman looking back was the real her or just a construct she'd built to fill the void. The not knowing was the hardest part. Had she been married? Did she have family somewhere still searching? Had she been running from something or towards something when whatever happened to her had happened? The questions were endless, and the silence where answers should be was deafening. Emily's assistant, a cheerful woman named Rachel, knocked on her office door. "Your 3 o'clock is here." The Riverside Commons project team. "Send them in," Emily said, pushing her existential crisis back into the corner where it lived most days. The meeting ran long, as they always did. By the time Emily wrapped up and headed to the parking garage, it was nearly 7. She'd promised Margaret she'd come by for dinner, and she was already running late. Emily slid into her black sedan, exhausted from another long day of being someone she wasn't entirely sure was real. As she navigated through downtown traffic, her mind wandered to the conversation she'd had with her therapist earlier that week. "You're holding yourself back," Dr. Stevens had observed. "You won't let anyone get too close because you're afraid they'll see through you. Realize you're not who you're pretending to be." "I'm not pretending," Emily had protested. "Aren't you? You've built this entire identity, this successful persona, but you've never let yourself fully inhabit it. You're always waiting for someone from your past to show up and tell you who you really are. That's not living, Emily. That's existing in limbo." The words had stung because they were true. Emily dated occasionally, but never seriously. She made professional connections, but few genuine friends. She kept everyone at arm's length, unable to shake the feeling that the real her, whoever that was, might surface at any moment and expose the elaborate fiction of Emily Johnson. Lost in thought, Emily didn't notice the traffic light change. Didn't see the delivery truck running the red light until it was too late. The impact sent her car spinning, crashing through a guardrail. The world flipped, glass shattered, metal screamed. Then everything went dark. When consciousness flickered back, Emily was aware of smoke, heat, and crushing pain. She tried to move but couldn't. Tried to call for help, but no sound came out. Panic flooded through her as she realized the car was on fire. This was it. 7 years of borrowed life, and this was how it ended. She'd die without ever knowing who she'd been, without ever finding the person she was supposed to be. Through the smoke and chaos, Emily saw a figure approaching. A man pulling at the door, breaking through glass. Strong hands reaching for her, unbuckling her seatbelt, pulling her free from the wreckage. His face was close to hers, urgent and focused, but she couldn't keep her eyes open. Darkness was pulling her under again. Just before she lost consciousness completely, Emily felt his fingers brush against her wrist, against the bracelet. She could have sworn she heard him gasp, heard him whisper something that sounded like a name. But it wasn't Emily. It was something else. Something that resonated in her bones even though her mind couldn't grasp it. Then nothing. Emily woke up in a hospital room for the second time in 7 years. The familiar beeping of monitors her first clue about where she was. Her head throbbed, and when she tried to sit up, pain radiated through her body. "Easy, Ms. Johnson," a nurse said, appearing at her bedside. "You were in a serious accident. You've got a concussion, some bruised ribs, and a lot of cuts and scrapes, but you're going to be fine." Margaret Johnson rushed into the room moments later, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, sweetheart, we were so worried. When the hospital called, I thought we'd lose you." Emily let herself be hugged, comforted by the only mother she knew. But her mind was elsewhere, trying to grasp something just out of reach. The man who'd pulled her from the car. There'd been something about him, something familiar. His face had triggered one of those déjà vu moments, stronger than any she'd experienced before. "The man who saved me," Emily asked the nurse. "Is he here? Did he give his name?" "The police report says a Parker Grant pulled you from the vehicle. He gave a statement and left." "Do you know him?" Parker Grant. The name meant nothing to Emily consciously, but somewhere deep in her fractured mind, something stirred. Like a door long locked suddenly rattling in its frame. "No," Emily said slowly. "I don't know anyone by that name." But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. Not a conscious lie, but the kind her damaged brain had been telling her for 7 years. The kind that kept her safe from truths she wasn't ready to face. Over the next 2 days in the hospital, Emily couldn't stop thinking about her rescuer. She asked the police for his contact information, ostensibly to thank him for saving her life. They provided an address for a garage on Maple Street, Grant's Automotive Repair. Something about that address tugged at her, though she couldn't say why. Maple Street. She'd driven past it 100 times but never paid attention. Now it felt significant, like a destination she'd been unconsciously moving toward all along. Dr. Stevens visited her in the hospital, concerned about how the accident might affect Emily's fragile psychological state. "Head trauma on top of your existing memory issues could be complicated," she warned. "If you experience any unusual memories or flashbacks, call me immediately. What if I want to remember?" Emily asked. "What if I'm tired of not knowing?" "What if I'm tired of not knowing?" "Then we'll work through it together," the therapist said gently. "But recovery has to happen at your brain's pace, not your conscious will's pace. Forcing it could do more harm than good." But Emily was done being patient. 7 years of limbo was enough. This accident, this man who'd saved her, the visceral reaction she'd had to his presence, it felt like the universe was finally offering her a thread to pull. And she was going to pull it, even if the whole tapestry of her constructed life unraveled in the process. When Margaret drove her home from the hospital, 3 days after the accident, Emily asked to make a stop. Where? Margaret asked, concerned. Maple Street, Emily said. Grant's Automotive Repair. I need to thank the man who saved my life. Margaret agreed, though her expression was worried. She'd supported Emily's search for her past initially, but had grown to fear what those memories might contain. What if Emily's previous life had been terrible? What if she'd been running from abuse or trauma? Sometimes Margaret believed the past was better left buried, but she didn't say this. She simply drove to the address Emily provided and waited in the car while Emily walked toward the modest garage with its hand-painted sign. Emily's heart was hammering as she approached. This was irrational. She was just thanking someone for a good deed. There was no reason for her hands to shake or her breath to catch. The garage was quiet, seemingly empty. Emily was about to leave when she heard voices from the office area. A man's deep voice and a younger, lighter voice. A girl's voice. Emily's feet carried her forward without conscious decision. She peered through the office door and saw him, the man from the accident. Parker Grant. He was kneeling beside a small girl with auburn hair, helping her with what looked like homework. The moment Emily saw them together, the world tilted. Her vision blurred. In her mind, unbidden, came a flash of memory so vivid it stole her breath. Holding a tiny baby, feeling overwhelming love mixed with terror. A man's voice, gentle and reassuring. You're doing great. She loves you already. Emily grabbed the doorframe for support. Gasping, Parker looked up at the sound. Their eyes met, and in that instant, Emily saw recognition flash across his face. Not the polite acknowledgement of a recent acquaintance, but something deeper. Shock, disbelief, something that looked almost like grief. Can I help you? He asked, his voice carefully neutral, but his eyes never leaving her face. I'm Emily Johnson, she managed. You saved me from the accident. I wanted to thank you. The little girl looked up at her with curious brown eyes, and Emily felt another jolt of recognition so strong she almost staggered. I'm Faith, the girl said shyly. Are you okay? Dad said you were really hurt. Dad? This was his daughter. Emily looked between them, seeing similarities in their expressions, the shape of their eyes. A family. Complete without her. So why did standing in this modest garage office, looking at these two strangers, feel more like home than anywhere she'd been in 7 years? Parker stared at the woman in his doorway, his mind fracturing into 1,000 contradictory thoughts. It was Sophia. It wasn't Sophia. She was alive. She was a stranger. She remembered. She had no idea who he was. Emily Johnson, he repeated, tasting the name. Foreign, wrong, but she'd introduced herself with such certainty, as if that had always been her name. Yes, she said. And he could see she was struggling with something too. Her hand kept going to her bracelet, the unconscious gesture so familiar it hurt. I wanted to thank you properly for pulling me from the car. The doctor said if you hadn't acted so quickly, I wouldn't have made it. Faith was staring at Emily with open curiosity. You're really pretty, she announced with the blunt honesty of 7-year-olds. Like a princess from my storybooks. Emily's face softened as she looked at Faith, and Parker saw tears gathering in her eyes, though she seemed unaware of them. Thank you, sweetheart. That's very kind. Faith, why don't you go grab a snack from the vending machine? Parker said, needing a moment alone with this woman, this ghost, this impossible situation. He handed Faith some coins. Once his daughter was gone, the air in the small office became charged with tension. Emily was looking around the space, her expression confused, as if she recognized something but couldn't place it. Have we met before? She asked suddenly. Before the accident, I mean. You seem familiar somehow. Parker's heart hammered against his ribs. This was his moment. He could tell her the truth right now. Could say, you're my wife, you disappeared 7 years ago. That's our daughter eating chips 20 feet away. could crack open this bizarre mystery and demand answers. But he looked at her face, saw genuine confusion there, saw no recognition of him or their life together, and something stopped him. If she truly didn't remember, if this wasn't some elaborate deception, then throwing that information at her now could be harmful. Or worse, she might think he was insane and disappear again, this time intentionally. "I don't think so," he said carefully. "Brookhaven's not that big, though. Maybe we've passed each other around town." Emily nodded slowly, but her expression said she didn't quite believe it. "That bracelet you're wearing," Parker ventured, keeping his voice casual. "It's beautiful. Does it have a story?" Emily's hand went to it automatically. "I don't know, actually. I've had it for years, but I can't remember where it came from. I was in an accident 7 years ago. I lost my memory. This bracelet was the only thing I had from my past. 7 years ago." The timeline matched perfectly. Parker's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "That must be difficult. Not remembering. It's like being a book with the first half of pages torn out," Emily said quietly. "You can read what's there, but you never quite understand the full story." She looked directly at him. "Do you ever feel like that? Like there's something missing that you can't quite name?" The question landed like a punch. "Every day," Parker admitted before he could stop himself. They stood there, two people with matching wounds, matching questions, connected by threads neither could see. Faith's laughter drifted in from the vending area, breaking the moment. "Your daughter is lovely," Emily said, and there was such longing in her voice that Parker's chest tightened. "How old is she?" 7. She turned 7 last month." 7, Emily repeated softly, and something flickered across her face. "Pain? Recognition?" It was gone before Parker could identify it. "Do you have any family?" Parker asked, trying to gather information without being obvious. "Adoptive parents. Richard and Margaret Johnson. They found me after my accident, helped me build a new life when no one else claimed me." She smiled sadly. "I suppose I'm lucky. Many people in my situation end up with nothing. At least I got a second chance, even if I don't remember the first one. No one else claimed me." The words cut through Parker like glass. She'd been in Brookhaven the whole time. 7 years, and she'd been right here, building a new life while he'd been falling apart, trying to understand why she'd left. "I should go," Emily said, though she didn't move. "I've taken enough of your time. I just wanted to say thank you. You saved my life." "Anyone would have done the same," Parker said automatically. "No," Emily said firmly. "Not everyone runs toward burning cars. You risked yourself for a stranger. That's not nothing." She pulled a business card from her purse. "If there's ever anything I can do for you or your daughter, please don't hesitate to call." Parker took the card. Meridian Design Group, Emily Johnson, CEO. He'd pulled his wife from a burning car, and she'd handed him a business card like he was a potential client. The absurdity of it should have been funny. It wasn't. "Actually," Parker said, "an idea forming. There might be something. My garage does pretty well with individual customers, but I've been trying to expand into commercial contracts. Fleet maintenance for larger companies. Does your firm have vehicles that need regular servicing?" Emily's face brightened. "We have a fleet of about 15 vehicles. SUVs, vans, company cars. Our current service provider just raised their rates significantly. I'd be happy to get quotes from you." She paused. "Though I should warn you, I'm going to be very involved in vetting the work. I like to understand the details of our vendors." "I'd expect nothing less," Parker said, meaning it. The Sophia he'd known had been the same way. Diving deep into any project she cared about, they exchanged information. And Emily agreed to bring one of her company vehicles by later that week for Parker to inspect and quote. It was a legitimate business arrangement, nothing more. Except it felt like something more. It felt like fate giving them a second chance, even if only one of them knew what they'd lost. After Emily left, Faith came bouncing back with chocolate on her face. She was nice. Did you know her from before? No, baby. She's just the lady from the accident. She wanted to say thank you. Faith tilted her head, studying him with those two perceptive eyes. You looked at her the way you look at Mommy's pictures sometimes. All sad and confused. Parker's breath caught. Just thinking about something else, sweetheart. Come on, let's close up for the day. That night, after Faith was asleep, Parker pulled out the box again. He compared his half of the bracelet to the one he'd seen on Emily's wrist. They matched. Not similar, identical. This wasn't coincidence. This was Sophia, somehow alive, somehow here, somehow completely unaware of who she'd been. Parker spent hours researching memory loss, amnesia, head trauma. He learned that retrograde amnesia, the loss of pre-existing memories, could be caused by traumatic brain injury. That some people never recovered their memories. That forcing someone to remember could sometimes cause more harm than good. He also learned that familiar people, places, and objects could sometimes trigger memory return. That emotional connection sometimes persisted even when explicit memories didn't dot by 3 in the morning. Parker had made a decision. He wouldn't tell Emily the truth, not yet. But he would stay close. Would create opportunities for her to be around him in Faith. Would see if her memories could be gently awakened rather than forcibly revealed. And if they couldn't? If Emily Johnson was who she'd be forever, and Sophia Mitchell was truly gone? Parker didn't let himself think that far ahead. For now he had what he hadn't had in 7 years, hope. Dangerous, painful, impossible hope that somehow his family might be restored, even if she didn't remember being his family at all. Over the following weeks, Emily found herself making excuses to visit Grant's automotive repair. She'd bring vehicles in for inspection, stop by to check on work progress, even just drop off coffee sometimes under the pretense of thanking Parker again for saving her life. She told herself it was due diligence, making sure their new service provider was reliable. The truth was more complicated. Being near Parker and Faith felt right in a way nothing else in her constructed life did. The garage's modest office, with its coffee-stained desk and Faith's drawings on the walls, felt more like home than her pristine penthouse. Parker, for his part, accepted her frequent visits with careful neutrality. He was professional, friendly, but maintained boundaries. Yet Emily caught him watching her sometimes with an expression she couldn't decipher. Not attraction, though there was something charged in the air between them. More like someone studying a puzzle they'd been working on for years. Faith, unburdened by adult complications, had no such reservations. She'd attached herself to Emily immediately, chattering about school projects, showing off her drawings, asking endless questions about Emily's work. Do you design houses? Faith asked one afternoon, sprawled on the office floor with her coloring books while Parker worked on a vehicle outside. Sometimes, Emily said, sitting down beside her. Mostly I design the insides of buildings. Make them beautiful and functional. Could you design a house for me and Dad? He says we'll get a bigger place someday, but that's probably when I'm old, like 20. Emily laughed. 20 isn't old, sweetheart. It is to me. I'll be all grown up by then. Faith's expression turned serious. Do you have any kids? The question hit Emily like a physical blow. No, I don't. Why not? Don't you want them? Faith, that's personal, Parker called from the garage bay, clearly having overheard, but Emily found herself answering anyway. I don't know if I have kids. From before my accident, I mean. I don't remember. Faith's eyes went wide. You mean you could have a little girl or boy somewhere and you don't even know? Maybe. The doctor said probably not, but they can't be sure. It's just one more thing I don't know about who I was. Faith was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then she reached out and patted Emily's hand with the solemn gravity only young people could manage. That's really sad. But at least you have now, right? You can make new memories even if you can't remember the old ones. Out of the mouths of 7-year-olds came profound wisdom. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. You're absolutely right. Thank you for reminding me. Later that week, Emily invited Parker and Faith to dinner at a nice restaurant, ostensibly to celebrate finalizing their service contract. Parker hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the gesture, but Faith's enthusiastic pleading won out. Watching them interact over dinner, Emily felt that strange sense of rightness grow stronger. The way Parker cut Faith's food without thinking. The way Faith leaned against him, secure in his love. The way they communicated in shorthand built from years of being a unit. It must be hard, Emily said, being a single parent. You make it look effortless. Parker's smile was tired. It's not effortless. It's just necessary. Faith is my whole world. You do what you have to for the people you love. Her mother, Emily ventured carefully, unsure why she was asking. Is she in the picture at all? Parker's expression shuddered. No, she left when Faith was very young. We haven't heard from her in years. I'm sorry. That must have been incredibly painful. It was. Parker looked at Faith, who was focused on her dessert. But we survived. We built a good life, just the two of us. Something in his tone made Emily think that survival had cost him more than he was saying. She wanted to ask more, to understand the shadows that crossed his face when he thought no one was watching. But she had no right to his pain, no claim to his history. They were just business associates. A man whose life she'd briefly entered and would eventually exit. Except it didn't feel like that. It felt like something deeper, something that defied logic and timeline. The following Saturday, Emily impulsively invited Faith to a design expo she was attending. If your dad says it's okay, she added quickly. I thought Faith might enjoy seeing all the creative displays. Parker looked like he wanted to refuse, but Faith was already bouncing with excitement. Please, Dad, please. I promise I'll be really good. I don't think that's, Parker started. I'll take excellent care of her, Emily promised. We'll be back by dinner. I just thought she seemed so interested in art and design. It might inspire her. Something in Parker's expression cracked. All right. But you have my number. Any problems, you call immediately. The expo was a revelation. Emily watched Faith's face light up as they walked through displays of architectural models, interior mock-ups, and design innovations. The girl asked intelligent questions, made creative observations, saw connections Emily might have missed. You have a real eye for this, Emily told her. Have you thought about being a designer when you grow up? Maybe, Faith said thoughtfully. Or maybe an artist. Or maybe both. Dad says I can be anything I want if I work hard enough. He's right. Your dad is a smart man. He's the best dad in the whole world, Faith said with absolute certainty. Even though he's always tired and works too much, he never misses anything important. He comes to all my school stuff and makes me breakfast every day and reads to me every night. Emily's chest tightened. You're very lucky to have him. I know. Faith looked up at her. But sometimes I wish I had a mom too. Not because Dad isn't enough. Just because it feels like something's missing, you know. Emily did know. She knew exactly what Faith meant, the sense of an absence you couldn't name. A shape of emptiness where something should be. They stopped for ice cream. And Faith showed Emily the bracelet her dad had given her for her birthday. It matches his, she explained. We're a team. That's what he always says. Emily felt her own bracelet warm against her skin. Teams, matching jewelry. She wondered if Parker had given his daughter that bracelet to replace another matching set he'd once had. When they returned to Parker's house that evening, he answered the door looking anxious. How was it? It was amazing, Dad. Emily knows so much about design and architecture, and she introduced me to actual real designers, and they said I had talent and... Faith's words tumbled over each other in her excitement. Parker's grateful smile transformed his face. "Thank you," he said to Emily quietly. "Really. She doesn't get enough of this kind of stuff. I do my best, but there are things I just can't give her." "She's a remarkable young lady," Emily said. "You should be proud." "I am. Every day." They stood there in the doorway, Faith having run inside to show her stuffed rabbit something from the expo, and Emily felt the pull again. The sense that she should know this man. That there was something just below the surface of her conscious mind, scratching to get out. "Parker," she said impulsively, "have you ever felt like you knew someone you just met? Like there's some connection you can't explain?" His eyes went wide, and for a moment she thought she saw fear there. Or maybe hope. Or maybe both. "Yes," he said finally. "I know exactly what you mean. I keep thinking I've known you before," Emily admitted. "Which doesn't make sense. I've checked my company records. You weren't a client before the accident. We have no professional connection. But still, when I'm here with you and Faith, I feel like I'm remembering something. Not a specific memory, just a feeling. Like coming home." Parker swallowed hard. Emily could see him wrestling with something. His hands opened and closed at his sides, and she had the distinct impression he was about to tell her something important. But then Faith came back, and the moment passed. "I should go," Emily said, though every cell in her body was screaming at her to stay. "Thank you for letting me borrow Faith today. Thank you for taking her. Anytime you want company at one of those events, she's love to go." It became a pattern. Every week or two, Emily would take Faith somewhere. Galleries, museums, design showrooms. She told herself she was mentoring an obviously talented young person. The truth was, being with Faith filled a hole in Emily she hadn't known existed. And being around Parker, even briefly during pickups and drop-offs, felt like slowly remembering a language she'd once been fluent in. One evening, Emily arrived to pick up Faith for a gallery opening and found Parker struggling to fix a leaky faucet in his kitchen. "Let me help," Emily said, surprising herself. "I know my way around plumbing." Occupational hazard of design work. Together they crawled under the sink, Parker handing Emily tools, their shoulders brushing in the confined space. And suddenly, without warning, Emily was hit with a flash so vivid it left her breathless. This exact scenario, but years ago. Younger versions of themselves, laughing as they tried to fix a similar leak in a different kitchen. Her making a joke about so much for my design degree, and him kissing her forehead saying, "Good thing you're pretty." Emily gasped, dropping the wrench. Parker caught it before it could brain either of them. "You okay?" I had a moment. Like a memory, but not quite. More like a feeling of this having happened before." "Déjà vu," Parker said carefully. "More than that." Emily emerged from under the sink, looking at him with new intensity. "Parker, do you know who I was before the accident? Do you know who I really am?" The question hung between them like a guillotine blade. Parker's face went through a dozen emotions in as many seconds. Finally he said, "I think you need to remember on your own. If I tell you, you might not believe me. Or worse, you might believe me just because I said it, not because you actually remember, and that wouldn't be real." "So you do know," Emily whispered. "You know who I was." "I know who I think you might be," Parker corrected. "But I could be wrong. And either way, forcing you to remember could hurt more than help. Your doctors said that, didn't they?" Emily nodded slowly. "But what if I want to know? What if not knowing is worse than any truth could be? What if?" Parker said softly, "The truth is so complicated, so painful, that your brain is protecting you by keeping it locked away. What if remembering breaks something that's been carefully healed?" They stared at each other, both knowing they were talking about more than just Emily's lost memories now. They were talking about whether to open doors that might be better left closed, whether to risk everything they'd both built on the slim chance of recovering something that might be better left in the past. The moment was broken by Faith calling from upstairs that she was ready to go. "We're not done with this conversation," Emily said. "No," Parker agreed. "We're not, but for now," they pretended normal. Emily took Faith to the gallery. Parker finished the plumbing repair alone, and both tried not to think about how close they'd come to shattering the fragile piece they'd built from fractured pieces. The fragile balance Parker and Emily had maintained shattered on a Tuesday morning when a certified letter arrived at Parker's garage. He signed for it absently, expecting another vendor notice or business correspondence. Instead, he found himself staring at legal letterhead that made his blood run cold. Petition for emergency custody evaluation. Filed by Vanessa Mitchell, maternal grandmother of Faith Mitchell, minor. Parker's hands shook as he read the document. Vanessa, Sophia's mother, whom he'd barely spoken to in 7 years, was suing for custody of Faith. The petition claimed that Parker was an unfit parent, unable to provide adequate care for a young person with medical needs, that his work schedule left Faith unsupervised for dangerous periods, that the environment he provided was unstable and potentially harmful. Every accusation was a distortion of truth twisted into a weapon. Yes, he worked long hours, but Faith was never unsupervised. Yes, they lived modestly, but his daughter had everything she needed. Yes, Faith had medical appointments, but they were managing her condition successfully. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. 3 weeks to find a lawyer he couldn't afford, to gather evidence of his fitness as a parent, to fight for the only thing in his life that truly mattered. Parker called the number listed for Vanessa's attorney, a sleek corporate firm in the city. "I'd like to speak with Mrs. Mitchell," he said, keeping his voice level. "Mrs. Mitchell does not wish to communicate directly with you," the paralegal informed him coolly. "All correspondence should go through legal channels." "Why is she doing this?" Parker demanded. "She hasn't seen Faith in 5 years. She didn't even send a birthday card." "That's precisely the issue. Mr. Grant, Mrs. Mitchell has been made aware of her granddaughter's medical needs and living situation. She believes Faith deserves better care than you're currently providing. If you have legal representation, please have them contact us." The line went dead. Parker sank into his office chair, the letter crumpling in his fist. Vanessa Mitchell had appeared at Sophia's funeral, which they'd held 2 years after the disappearance. When he'd finally accepted she wasn't coming back, Vanessa had been cold, distant, blamed Parker for her daughter's presumed death. She'd looked at baby Faith with something like disgust and left without even holding her granddaughter. Now suddenly she wanted custody? It made no sense unless Parker's stomach dropped. Unless Vanessa had heard something. Unless someone had told her that Sophia might be alive. But how? Who could possibly know except Parker himself? That evening, Parker had to tell Faith about the situation. He kept it simple, age-appropriate, but honest. "Your grandmother, your mom's mom, wants to spend more time with you. There's going to be a court hearing to figure out what's best." Faith's face crumpled. "I don't want to leave you, Dad. I don't even know her. Why would she want me now?" "I don't know, baby. But I'm going to fight this. You're not going anywhere. I promise." It was a promise he had no guarantee he could keep, and the knowledge terrified him. Parker immediately called Emily. He didn't plan to, didn't want to drag her into this mess, but found himself dialing her number before conscious thought caught up. "I need help," he said when she answered. "Legal help. I know your company must have lawyers on retainer." "Parker, what's wrong?" "You sound panicked." He explained the situation, the words tumbling out in a rush. Emily listened without interrupting. And when he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "I'll make some calls," she finally said. "One of our corporate attorneys specializes in family law. I'll see if she can take your case pro bono, or at least reduced rate. Emily, I can't ask you to. You're not asking, I'm offering. Faith is, she matters to me. You both do, let me help. 2 days later, Parker found himself in a downtown office meeting with Rachel Chun, a sharp-eyed attorney who reviewed the custody petition with clinical efficiency. The good news is, their case is weak, Rachel said. You have steady employment, no criminal record. Faith's medical records show consistent care, and her school reports are excellent. The bad news is, custody evaluations are unpredictable. They'll interview Faith, inspect your home, scrutinize every aspect of your life. So what do? We build a case showing you're an exemplary father. We gather character witnesses, document your parenting, demonstrate the stability and love you provide. And we find out why Vanessa Mitchell suddenly wants custody after years of absence. That's the real question here. Parker had his own theory about that but couldn't share it. Not yet. Not until he knew for certain what was happening with Emily's memories. The custody evaluation began the following week. A stern woman named Dr. Patricia Hayes came to inspect Parker's home, interviewed Faith, asked invasive questions about their daily routine, their emotional relationship, their financial situation. Faith handled it with remarkable composure, but Parker could see the strain. She became clingy, had nightmares, asked repeatedly if she was going to be taken away. Never, Parker promised, holding her close. You're my daughter. Nothing will ever change that. Emily showed up during this period with unexpected frequency, bringing meals, helping with homework, providing a calm presence that soothed both Parker and Faith. She seemed to understand instinctively what they needed, when to talk and when to simply be there. One evening, after Faith had finally fallen asleep, following a particularly difficult therapy session, Emily and Parker sat on his small porch in the cooling air. I've been thinking, Emily said carefully, about what you said, that you know who I might have been. Parker tensed. Emily, no, let me finish. I've been having more flashbacks. More moments where I remember things, or think I remember them. And they all involve you and Faith. Not explicitly, but the feelings are there. Recognition, love, loss. She turned to face him. Parker, was I Faith's mother? The question hung in the night air between them. Parker closed his eyes, wrestling with 7 years of anger and hope and grief. I think so, he admitted finally. But I don't know how or why. The woman I married disappeared 7 years ago. You appeared with no memory around the same time. You have her bracelet, her face, her mannerisms, but you're not her. You're Emily. And I don't know how to reconcile those two truths. Emily's breath caught. What was her name? The woman you married. Sophia. Sophia Mitchell. Mitchell, Emily repeated. Like Vanessa Mitchell. Like Faith's last name. Her hand went to her bracelet. This is from you, isn't it? You gave this to Sophia. On our first anniversary, there was a matching one. Parker pulled a chain from under his shirt. His half of the bracelet hung there, the one he'd started wearing after finding Emily. Always and forever. That's what the two pieces said together. Emily stared at the matching bracelets, tears streaming down her face. I don't remember. I want to, but I don't. There's just this feeling like I've lost something precious. And being with you and Faith is the closest I've come to finding it again. Maybe that's enough, Parker said softly. Maybe we don't need you to remember being Sophia. Maybe Emily is who you are now, and we can build something new from that. Can we? Emily asked. With this custody case hanging over you? With Vanessa Mitchell, my possible mother, trying to take Faith away? This is so complicated, Parker. I know. But complicated doesn't mean impossible. They sat in silence, both processing the weight of what had been acknowledged. The relationship between them had shifted, become something neither could easily define or deny. The night before the custody hearing, Parker couldn't sleep. He kept running through everything Rachel had told him to expect. Every possible question they might ask, every way this could go wrong. At 2 in the morning. His phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Can't sleep either. Thinking about you and Faith. Whatever happens tomorrow, you won't face it alone. Parker stared at that message for a long time. Then he replied, Thank you. For everything. You didn't have to get involved in this mess. Her response came immediately. Yes, I did. Because maybe I can't remember being Sophia, but Emily knows what it means to care about people. And I care about you both. More than I probably should. Parker fell asleep with his phone in his hand. That message glowing on the screen like a promise. The courtroom was smaller than Parker had imagined. Less dramatic than television made these places seem. Just a wood-paneled room with fluorescent lighting and many people deciding his daughter's fate. Vanessa Mitchell sat on the opposite side with her legal team. Looking older than Parker remembered, but no less severe. Her gray hair was pulled into a tight bun, her expression carved from ice. She didn't look at Parker or Faith, kept her gaze fixed straight ahead as if acknowledging them would crack her composure. Rachel Chun sat beside Parker, her files organized with military precision. Emily was in the gallery behind them, having taken the day off work to be there, despite having no official role in the proceedings. The judge, an older woman named Justice Morrison, reviewed the case documents with methodical care. Mrs. Mitchell, you're petitioning for emergency custody of your granddaughter, Faith Mitchell, whom you allege is being inadequately cared for by her father. Mr. Grant, you oppose this petition. Let's begin with Mrs. Mitchell's testimony. Vanessa took the stand, her voice steady and cold. Your Honor, I've only recently learned the extent of my granddaughter's medical needs and living situation. Her father works excessive hours at a garage, leaving Faith in questionable care arrangements. She lives in a modest home barely suitable for a growing young person. And most significantly, Mr. Grant has been lying about my daughter's fate. Parker's head snapped up. What? Your Honor, Vanessa continued, I have evidence that my daughter Sophia may still be alive. That Mr. Grant has known this and deliberately kept it from me, from Faith, from everyone. This deception alone demonstrates his unfitness as a guardian. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Rachel was on her feet immediately. Objection! This is wild speculation with no basis in fact. Mrs. Mitchell is making inflammatory accusations to manipulate these proceedings. Mrs. Mitchell, the judge said sternly, do you have actual evidence to support this claim? I do, Your Honor. A private investigator I hired discovered that a woman matching my daughter's description has been seen frequently with Mr. Grant and Faith over recent weeks. A woman who goes by Emily Johnson but bears a striking resemblance to Sophia. I believe Mr. Grant knows this woman is my daughter and has been hiding her existence to maintain sole custody. Parker felt the world tilt. How had Vanessa discovered Emily? Had she been following them? Having them watched? Rachel was arguing procedural grounds, demanding proof, but Parker barely heard her. Because at that moment, Emily stood up in the gallery. Your Honor, Emily said, her voice clear despite obvious nervousness. May I approach? And you are? Justice Morrison asked. Emily Johnson. The woman Mrs. Mitchell is referring to. Emily walked to the front of the courtroom, every eye following her. She looked at Vanessa for the first time, and something flickered across the older woman's face. Recognition, hope, fear. Your Honor, Mrs. Mitchell is correct that I've been spending time with Parker and Faith Grant, but until very recently, I had no idea why I felt so drawn to them. Emily took a deep breath. 7 years ago, I was in an accident that left me with complete retrograde amnesia. I lost all memory of my life before waking up in the hospital. I was adopted by the Johnson family and built a new life as Emily Johnson. The courtroom was utterly silent now. But in recent weeks, I've been recovering fragments of memory. Triggered by being around Parker and Faith, small things at first, Feelings of familiarity, unexplained emotional reactions. Then more concrete flashes, memories of a different life, a different name. Emily's voice broke slightly. I've spent the last week undergoing extensive medical and DNA testing to confirm what I suspected. She pulled documents from her bag and handed them to the judge. These are the results. DNA comparison with biological samples from Vanessa Mitchell, obtained with her private investigator's help, and from Faith Grant, obtained with her father's permission. The tests confirm with 99.9% certainty that I am Sophia Mitchell, that I am Faith's biological mother and Parker's wife. The courtroom exploded. Vanessa made a sound like a wounded animal. Parker sat frozen, unable to process what was happening. Emily had known. She'd remembered and hadn't told him. Justice Morrison called for order, reviewed the documents with a court clerk. After several tense minutes, she looked up. These appear to be legitimate medical records from reputable facilities. Mrs. Mitchell, did you provide DNA for this comparison? I didn't know what it was for, Vanessa said, her composure shattered, tears streaming down her face. The investigator said he needed it to rule someone out. I never imagined Sophia. She looked at Emily with naked longing. Is it really you? Emily's own tears were falling now. I don't remember being Sophia. I don't remember you or Parker or most of my life before the accident. But the evidence says yes, I am your daughter. I am Faith's mother. I am Parker's wife, though neither of us knew it until recently. Why didn't you come forward sooner? The judge asked. If you've been recovering memories, why wait until this hearing? Because I wasn't certain, Emily admitted. Because I didn't want to disrupt Faith's life, based on fragmented memories that might be false. And because the doctors warned that premature disclosure could interfere with natural memory recovery. She turned to face Vanessa directly. But when I learned about this custody petition, when I realized my existence might be used to take Faith from the only parent she's ever really known, I couldn't stay silent. Emily walked to the witness stand, taking the seat without being asked. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. Mrs. Mitchell, I understand you want what's best for Faith. I understand you've spent 7 years thinking your daughter was dead. And now you're confronted with a miracle you never expected. But Parker Grant has been an incredible father. He sacrificed everything for Faith. He raised her alone, navigated her medical needs, gave her stability and love when I couldn't, because I didn't even know she existed. Vanessa was openly sobbing now. You just left. You disappeared. Do you know what that did to us? To me? I didn't leave, Emily said firmly. I had an accident. The medical records from 7 years ago show I was brought into Brookhaven General with severe head trauma. No identification, no memory. I didn't abandon anyone. I lost myself and couldn't find my way back. She looked at Parker, who was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. I know this is complicated. I know that being Sophia biologically doesn't make me her in any real sense. I don't have her memories or her relationship with Parker or her bond with Faith. I'm a stranger who happens to be genetically connected to all of you. Emily's voice grew stronger. But I also know that taking Faith away from Parker would be devastating for her. He's her father in every way that matters. And while I may not remember being her mother, I've come to care for her deeply in the time we've spent together. The best thing for Faith is to stay with Parker, to maintain the stability she's known her whole life. I can be part of her life now that I know the truth, but I should supplement her family, not disrupt it. Justice Morrison leaned forward. Mr. Grant, you've been quiet through all this. What do you have to say? Parker stood slowly, his world still reeling. He looked at Emily, at Vanessa, at the lawyers and court officials all waiting for his response. 7 years ago, he said quietly, my wife disappeared. I searched everywhere, did everything I could to find her. When that failed, I focused on giving our daughter the best life possible. I never stopped loving Sophia, never stopped wondering what happened. But I also never stopped being Faith's father. Never stopped being Faith's father. He turned to Emily. You say you're not Sophia, that you don't remember our life together. Maybe that's true. But I've watched you with Faith these past weeks, and I see her in you. The way you notice small details, the way you instinctively know how to comfort her, the way you light up when she succeeds at something. That's not just Emily Johnson being kind. That's a mother's love, even if you don't consciously remember being a mother. Parker faced the judge. I don't want to keep Faith from her biological mother or her grandmother. I never wanted that. I just want what's best for my daughter. And what's best for her is staying in the home she knows, with the parent who's been there every day of her life, while building new relationships with the family she didn't know she had. Justice Morrison sat back, clearly processing the most unusual case she'd likely ever heard. This is extraordinary, she said finally. Mrs. Mitchell, do you wish to continue your petition for custody in light of these revelations? Vanessa wiped her eyes, looking between Emily and Parker. When she spoke, her voice was broken. No, I withdraw the petition. I thought she needed protecting. I thought you'd kept my daughter from me deliberately. But I see now, this is complicated beyond anything I imagined. She stood, walked to where Emily sat, and tentatively reached out to touch her daughter's face. Can you forgive me? For doubting you? For trying to take Faith away? There's nothing to forgive, Emily said softly. You were protecting your granddaughter. That's what family does. The hearing concluded with Justice Morrison dismissing the custody petition and suggesting family counseling for all parties to navigate this complex situation. As they filed out of the courtroom, Parker felt numb, overwhelmed by everything that had been revealed. Outside, Emily caught his arm. Can we talk, please? They found a quiet corner away from the others. Faith was with Rachel, being shielded from the worst of the emotional fallout. When did you know? Parker asked. When did you remember? I didn't fully remember until the DNA tests came back 3 days ago, Emily admitted. Before that, it was just suspicions and fragments. I couldn't tell you based on feelings alone. I needed proof, and now? Do you remember us? Our marriage? Having Faith? Emily shook her head, fresh tears falling. Only pieces, flashes, feelings without context. It's like looking at a photo album of someone else's life. I can see the events, but I can't feel them as my own. She met his eyes. I'm sorry, Parker. I'm sorry I disappeared. I'm sorry I can't remember. I'm sorry for all of it. Parker surprised himself by pulling her into a hug. She stiffened for a moment, then melted against him, and for just a second, she felt exactly like Sophia used to. Like coming home. We'll figure this out, he whispered. Somehow we'll make this work. The weeks following the courtroom revelation were a strange blend of joy and awkwardness, healing and uncertainty. Parker, Emily, and Vanessa met with a family therapist who specialized in complex reunification cases. Faith, remarkably resilient but clearly confused, attended separate sessions designed for young people processing family trauma. Emily moved carefully through this new reality, conscious that every step she took rippled through lives already disrupted. She continued running Meridian Design but scaled back her hours, making time for weekly dinners with Parker and Faith, supervised visits with Vanessa, and intensive therapy sessions focused on memory recovery. Some memories returned in vivid bursts. Emily suddenly recalled her wedding day, the feeling of the dress against her skin, the way Parker had looked at her like she was the only person in the world. But the emotional connection to that memory remained distant, like watching a movie starring someone who looked like her. Other memories stayed locked away. She couldn't remember being pregnant, couldn't recall Faith's birth, couldn't access the deep maternal bond that should have been there. It created a strange disconnect where Emily knew intellectually she'd given birth to Faith, but felt more like a caring mentor than a mother. Faith handled the situation with the adaptability of youth, though not without confusion. "So you're my mom, but you don't remember being my mom?" she asked Emily during one of their Saturday outings. "That's right," Emily confirmed. "I know I am because the tests prove it. But in my heart and my memories, I'm still learning who you are." "That's okay," Faith said with the wisdom that sometimes surprised adults. "Dad says love isn't just about remembering the past. It's about choosing to be there today and tomorrow. So even if you don't remember yesterday, you can still choose to love me today." Emily had to blink back tears. "Your dad is very wise. And yes, I do choose that. Every day." Parker and Emily navigated their relationship with extreme caution. Legally, they were still married. The marriage had never been dissolved. But emotionally, they were strangers with shared history neither fully understood. They agreed to take things slowly, to build something new rather than trying to resurrect what had been. "I'm not Sophia," Emily told him during one of their therapy sessions. "I know that's hard to accept because I have her face, her DNA, her legal identity. But the woman you married is gone, Parker. I'm what's left. And I'm different." "I know," Parker said, though the grief in his voice suggested he was still processing that loss. "But Emily, you're not so different that I can't see her in you. The way you organize things, the questions you ask, the way you tilt your head when you're thinking. Those are Sophia's mannerisms. Or maybe they're just my mannerisms," Emily countered gently. "Maybe Sophia and Emily are both versions of the same person, just shaped by different experiences." Their therapist, Dr. Rachel Stevens, intervened. "This is the challenge you'll both face. Parker, you need to mourn the Sophia you knew while getting to know Emily. And Emily, you need to accept that you carry Sophia's history, even if you can't access her memories. You're not two separate people. You're one person who experienced a traumatic disruption in continuity." Vanessa's reintegration into their lives added another layer of complexity. She and Emily met for lunch weekly, Vanessa sharing stories and photos from Emily's past, trying to help her daughter remember. Some stories sparked recognition. Most didn't. "You were such a creative person," Vanessa said, showing Emily a photo of teenage Sophia painting in an art studio. "You wanted to be an artist before you switched to design. You said art was too personal, too exposing. You preferred the structure of design work." Emily stared at the photo, seeing her own face years younger, full of dreams and uncertainty. "I still chose design," she said softly, even without remembering why. "Some things must be core to who I am." "You also chose Parker," Vanessa said, her voice careful. "I wasn't supportive of your marriage. I thought you were too young, that he wasn't established enough. I said terrible things when you told me you were pregnant. I regret that now. I missed so much of your life because of my pride." "You're here now," Emily said. "That's what matters." Faith's relationship with Vanessa developed slowly. The older woman was stiff, unused to young people, uncertain how to connect with a granddaughter who'd grown up without her. But she tried, bringing gifts, attending Faith's school events, learning her interests. One afternoon, Vanessa asked to take Faith to the park alone. Parker hesitated, old protective instincts flaring, but Emily encouraged him. "She's trying," Emily said. "And Faith deserves to know her grandmother. Just like she deserves to know me, even though I can't remember being her mother." When they returned, Faith was chattering about the ducks they'd fed and the stories Vanessa had told about Emily's past. Vanessa looked lighter somehow, the severe lines of her face softened by genuine connection. "Thank you," she told Parker quietly, "for raising such a remarkable young lady. For being the parent I couldn't be when my own daughter needed me." Parker accepted the thanks with grace he'd had to learn. Forgiveness, he was discovering, wasn't a single moment, but a continuous choice. Emily's company became a source of stability during the upheaval. She promoted her assistant Rachel to co-manager, allowing her to step back without abandoning her responsibilities. The work gave her grounding when family dynamics became overwhelming. She also began using her resources to help Parker's garage. Not charity, she was careful about that, but legitimate business opportunities. Meridian Design's fleet contract expanded, and Emily connected Parker with other corporate clients. His business grew steadily, allowing him to hire an assistant mechanic and reduce his own hours. "I can actually make dinner at a reasonable time now," Parker told Faith one evening. "No more cold pizza 3 nights a week." "I liked our pizza nights," Faith protested, but she was smiling. Their new normal was strange but functional. Sunday dinners became a ritual where Parker, Emily, Faith, and sometimes Vanessa gathered together. The conversations were sometimes awkward, often emotional, but always genuine. They were building something new from fractured pieces, a family that didn't look like anyone's traditional model but worked for them. Emily's memories continued, returning in fragments. She remembered the apartment where she and Parker had lived, though when they drove past it, the building had been demolished. She remembered her favorite restaurant, which had closed years ago. Her past was a ghost town of places and moments that no longer existed. Moments that no longer existed. But new memories were being created. Faith's face when Emily surprised her at a school art show. Parker's grateful smile when she brought dinner after a long day at the garage. Vanessa's tears when Emily spontaneously hugged her goodbye after lunch. These moments were real, present. Hers in a way the recovered memories weren't. "I'm not trying to replace what you lost," Emily told Parker one evening as they sat on his porch, a ritual that had become theirs. "I can't be Sophia for you. But maybe Emily can be someone you want to know." Parker looked at her, really looked, seeing both the woman he'd loved and the woman she'd become. "I'm starting to realize," he said slowly, "that maybe I don't need you to be Sophia. Maybe getting to know Emily is its own kind of gift." It wasn't a declaration of love or a promise of reconciliation. But it was honest, and for now, honesty was enough. 6 months after the courtroom revelation, Emily stood in Parker's kitchen making pancakes. It was Saturday morning, and Faith was still asleep upstairs. This had become their routine, Emily arriving early on weekends, helping with breakfast, spending the day with her daughter and the man who was technically still her husband, but felt more like a close friend she was slowly falling for. Parker entered the kitchen, hair rumpled from sleep, and poured himself coffee. They moved around each other with increasing ease, the awkwardness of early months giving way to comfortable familiarity. "Faith's art teacher called yesterday," Parker said. "They want to enter some of her drawings in a regional competition. She's really talented." "She gets that from Sophia," Emily said, then corrected herself. "From me, from whoever I was." "It's still strange, talking about my own past in third person. Does it bother you? Not remembering?" Emily considered the question. "Less than it used to. I'm starting to accept that my life began 7 years ago in that hospital. Everything before is just interesting backstory. What matters is who I'm choosing to be now, and who's that?" Parker asked, something vulnerable in his expression. "Someone who cares deeply about a remarkable 7-year-old girl. Someone who wants to be part of her life in whatever way makes sense. And someone who is maybe, possibly, starting to have feelings for her father that have nothing to do with being married on paper and everything to do with who he is as a person." Parker set down his coffee cup. "Emily, you don't have to say anything," Emily interrupted. "I know this is complicated. We're taking things slow. I just wanted you to know that Emily's feelings are real, even if Sophia's memories aren't accessible." Before Parker could respond, Faith appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Are those chocolate chip pancakes I smell?" "Of course," Emily said, grateful for the interruption and the return to safer ground. "Would I make any other kind on Saturday?" Over breakfast, Faith announced she'd been working on a special project. It's a family tree for school, but not the regular kind. Miss Peterson said we could interpret it creatively. Want to see? She retrieved a large poster board from the living room. Instead of a traditional tree with branches, Faith had drawn a garden with different flowers, each labeled with a name and connected by roots underground. See, this big sunflower is Dad, because he's always there and strong. And this one is Emily Mommy, because Miss Peterson said you're both names and both important. And this is Grandma Vanessa. And these little flowers around the edges are my friends and teachers and people who help us grow. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. Emily Mommy? Is that okay? Faith asked, suddenly uncertain. I know you don't like being called Mom because you don't remember being her. But Emily feels too formal because you're not just my friend. So I thought Emily Mommy might work. Emily knelt down to Faith's level, pulling her into a hug. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Parker watched them, his expression complex. Later, after Faith went outside to play, he told Emily, she's been worried about what to call you. Spent weeks working on that project, trying to figure out how to include everyone without making anyone feel left out. She's wise beyond her years, Emily said. You've raised an incredible person, Parker. We're raising her, Parker corrected. You're part of this now. However we define it, whatever we call it, you're part of our family. That afternoon, the three of them visited the site where Emily's accident had occurred 7 years ago. It had taken months for Emily to feel ready for this. But her therapist suggested it might help provide closure. They stood by the roadside where everything had changed, where one life ended and another began. Emily tried to remember what had happened, but the memories remained locked away. I was probably heading somewhere, she said thoughtfully. Had some purpose, some plan. But I never made it there. Instead, I ended up here, in this life, with you two. And I can't help thinking that maybe this is where I was supposed to end up all along. That's a nice way to look at it, Parker said softly. Or maybe, Faith interjected. You were always supposed to be our family. You just took a different path getting here. They stood together, three people connected by biology, trauma, choice, and growing love. The past remained mysterious, but the future stretched before them, full of possibility. As they walked back to the car, Faith reached out and took both their hands. Emily and Parker's fingers brushed, and they looked at each other over Faith's head. No words were spoken, but something passed between them. Recognition, hope, possibility. That evening, as Emily prepared to leave, Parker walked her to her car. I've been thinking, he said, about us, about what we might become, and? Emily's heart raced. I think we should keep taking it slow. Keep building what we're building. But I also think, maybe, we should think about dating. Like actual, intentional dating. Not as the people we used to be, but as who we are now. Emily smiled, feeling lighter than she had in 7 years. I'd like that. I'd like that very much. As she drove home, Emily touched the bracelet on her wrist. For the dreamer who never gave up. Maybe Sophia had been the dreamer. Or maybe Emily was. Or maybe they were both dreamers, separated by trauma, but connected by something deeper than memory. Her phone buzzed with a text from Faith. Thank you for being my Emily Mommy. I love you. And another from Parker. Thank you for coming back. Even if you don't remember leaving. Emily pulled over to respond, her vision blurred with happy tears. She'd spent 7 years searching for who she'd been. Maybe it was time to embrace who she was becoming instead. The road ahead was uncertain. There were still questions without answers, memories that might never return, relationships that needed continued healing. But for the first time since waking in that hospital, Emily felt like she knew where she belonged. Not in the past she couldn't remember, but in the present she was actively creating. One Saturday pancake breakfast at a time. Up next, You've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.